Hi everyone, I am just doing this recording to show you how to do the data cleaning on a SPSS file that you have downloaded from Qualtrics. This is if you are using Qualtrics for an online survey. So in Qualtrics your survey will look like this. So we have some categorical questions and we have some like-it questions in the form of a matrix table. In this one I asked using the attitude towards object model about 3 brands of noodles. So what you do to get your SPSS file is you go to data and analysis. We have closed the survey, so all of the responses are now recorded as responses. In this case there's 412 people who have attempted the survey. That's a different number than will have completed the survey, and it will be a different number than the number of responses that you end up deciding to keep at the end. So we choose export and import, export data, selecting SPSS for this data file, and download. And it's going to think for a bit before it will let me open the file, and it's opened it on over here. So in SPSS we see 2 different types of data. You see the data view where we actually see the responses to the survey over here, and we have the variable view which describes the information that we need about the variables themselves. Now in setting up this survey I did a terrible thing, and in reordering my questions I didn't reorder the numbers, the question numbers in Qualtrics. So this is why I have question 28 and then question 5 and then question 24. I should have fixed that. I didn't. It's too late now. I can redo it now if I want to. So one of the best things about using Qualtrics to do your data collection is that it will pre-populate these label and values fields. However, when it populates them, it often populates them with very long names, which will make things difficult later. So we'll look at relabeling them in a little bit. The other thing that Qualtrics does is these things up at the top here, all these variables that it adds as default settings in their surveys. So all of these additions are these columns here. So it tells us when someone started, when it ended, the status, which is whether number 1 is a status means that it was done as a preview, whereas a 0 means that it was an actual response. We have IP addresses, progress, recipient names, their location, all sorts of things that we don't actually need. So I am actually going to get rid of many of these columns. So you can choose to keep or delete as many of these as you like. I personally get rid of everything except, so I get rid of the start date, end date, status. Actually, I take back status because I've actually got preview ones here. So I'm actually going to delete those 2 preview responses because that was me. So I've deleted those 2 that were me so I don't get confused later after I remove that column. This is why we do this, need to be very careful in doing this. So I select start date, end date, status, the IP address. I'm going to leave progress because it will help me decide other ones that I might need to be deleted. I'll delete duration, finished, record date. I'll kind of keep response ID because it's the only way I can uniquely identify who is who later. I'm going to get rid of all of these columns related to who a person is because I don't know. Location, distribution channel, and user language because it was all in English. And then I hit delete. So this has made my data much easier to look at. So these are all the completed responses here in the middle, ranging from 1 to 6 as the responses for, or 1 to 7 in terms of the bulk of the responses. So this column here was whether I was asking people whether they're undergraduate or postgraduate. If I look at the variable view, I can see that 1 is undergraduate and 2 is postgraduate. However, I had some people who didn't tell me whether they were undergrad or postgrads. So I'll have to make decisions later. The other one that people seem to have ignored is what tutorial time they were enrolled in. That was helpful of them. So I have to decide whether that's critical pieces of information and whether I can keep their responses in, because they seem to have completed all the other questions in this survey. However, as I go down, so we have all these progress of 100%. Yep. We've got lots of data for them. But as I get into these, we start hitting 94. This person is okay. I don't know why it's being recorded at 94%, but the system sometimes is less accurate than it should be. 94. However, this person's done only 29%, so this person can be removed from the data set because there's just not enough responses here in order to make any kind of reasonable statistical analysis. I can also say this person, 41%, we've got all that missing data there, missing, So because all of these are incomplete, I'm going to delete them. So I started out with 412 responses to the survey. It was 414 with my 2 practice ones, and without those, 412. I've then removed another 14 responses, I think, if my math is correct. So I have 398 responses, usable responses now. So we have these missing data here. I can either use a missing data procedure that is available through SPSS. A link to that is available through the SPSS documentation. Or if I have a great need to know, I have to know which tutorial time people are enrolled in, and I have to know whether undergraduate or postgraduates, I can choose to also delete all of the responses that include any form of missing data. So these are choices that you have to make in terms of what your final sample size or your final sample will end up looking like. You simply need to document those choices and report what you started with and the deletion decisions that were made. So the other thing to look at is in the variable view when it comes to clearing up these numbers. So if you look at these, the name of the variables, these are generated by Qualtrics based on the question number in their system. However, in doing the analysis, I don't find these very easy to understand at all, so I tend to change my question names to things that reflect what is actually being measured in that question. So for instance, question 28 related to enrollment, whether you're undergrad or postgrad. So I might change this name to enroll stat, basically to signify enrollment status. This one related to their enrollment time, so I can change this to enroll time. And this is the first of the questions that actually relates to what I'm trying to measure, and it's the importance of attributes of the various noodles. So I can change this to, I use IMP for importance, ATT for attribute, and I can make it brand, because that is what is being measured in this attribute, brand. So I can select the bit that is going to be repeated. I'm going to copy that and say paste, paste, price, so on and so forth down this column. The important thing to note with this column is that you can't use numbers or any other kind of punctuation except for this underscore. So you can't have spaces, you can't have question marks, anything like that can't be included there. Whereas the label section, you can include that information. The other thing to note with Qualtrics data when you download it is that it includes the entire question as part of the label, which makes the analysis and the selection of the correct variables in your analysis quite difficult to do. So I have, in these questions here, I've decided that these are going to be important. You know, imp_at is going to be my code name for importance of attributes. So I don't need to know how important are the following attributes to your choice of a lunch option. I don't need to know that to do my analysis. So I can simply choose this column here, and I can go to edit, and I can choose replace, and I'm going to replace it with imp_at, but I'm going to look for how important, whoopsie daisy, are the following to your choice of a lunch option, and a question mark. So I'm going to replace all. I've realized following attributes, and then replace all. There we go, that worked. So a quicker way to do it would be to go rate, I basically copy that and then do the find and replace. I'd be much more accurate, but it's a lot quicker, and when it comes to doing your analysis, this is what it ends up looking like. So if I go analyze, and I'm just going to choose descriptive statistics and my frequencies, so this is the list that comes up for me to choose which variables I want to choose frequencies for. And as you can see, the ones that I have relabeled as imp_at, brand, price, flavor, nutrition, convenience, are a lot easier to select and understand what I am selecting versus these ones that I haven't relabeled, because they are really long and you have to hover your mouse over the top of them to see what they actually relate to in terms of whether it's about flavor, nutrition, price. So this is a brief, very brief overview of relabeling and naming your variables. The other thing to look at is in the values section. Qualtrics does automatically populate these ones, but sometimes the values themselves can get a bit skew-whiff in Qualtrics itself. I've had it where I've had 4 options, and one was 32, one was 46, one was 57, and one was 64. I don't know how this happened, but I did need to recode those values so they'd be 1, 2, 3, and 4. So just to also check those things. These will also show up when you do your frequency counts, and you can relabel those as needed. So anything else you need to know about SPSS setting it up would be available in the SPSS introduction videos that I have made available. I'm just covering the main points about what it means to transfer data out of Qualtrics into an SPSS file, because it has its own quirks, shall we say.